Hi, this is Alan Rigg with SalesCompensationStore.com. In this video, I'm going to discuss a very important sales compensation plan limitation. Are you ready? Here it is. The limitation is no sales compensation plan, no matter how carefully designed, should be expected to produce the desired sales behaviors and results all by itself. Sales compensation can only go so far in motivating sales behavior. There are other things that we have to do as effective managers to get the desired behaviors and results. These begin with setting clear accountabilities for our salespeople for what they're expected to do. And this deals with activity as well as results. How much prospecting should they be doing? What kinds of prospecting? What time of day? What messages should they be using? What process should they be using for qualifying opportunities? How do we ensure that they're maxing penetration of every assigned account? And so forth. So the issue is, we need to set clear accountabilities and follow it up by inspecting the quantity and quality of their activities on a regular and consistent basis. Let's talk first about inspecting activity quantity. A great example is making telephone cold calls. The first thing we have to do is break down the activity into the meaningful steps. So, for example, for a cold call on the telephone, you might have the number of times you dial the phone, the number of times you end up in voicemail, the number of times that you speak to a gatekeeper, the number of times you speak to a decision maker, and the number of appointments you book with decision makers. Now, a simple way to track this kind of activity is to create a spreadsheet, where down the left-hand side you may have the specific activities that I just outlined, and across the top you have the days of the week. All a salesperson has to do is make a tick mark in a certain cell for a day of the week and an activity when they conduct that activity. Now, salespeople always complain about doing this kind of administration. And my point to them for this kind of activity inspection would be, look, if you're making a tick mark for each of these activities, in a week's time you might spend 5 minutes doing this. And the data that we're going to get is going to be so valuable for helping us improve your performance that it's worth that time investment. I promise you. Now here's how we use the data. At the end of the week, we add up the number of dials, the number of times they ended up in voicemail, and so forth. If we expect them to make 100 dials a day and they make 10, the problem's pretty obvious. They need to increase their level of activity. If they're making an adequate number of dials and ending up in voicemail, then we have to try a couple of different ideas. Perhaps they should be dialing during different times of the day, and they'll have a better chance of reaching decision makers. Or perhaps we need to develop some very compelling and rich voicemail messages and a series of them so that they have a chance of getting people interested enough to call them back. If we find that they're speaking to gatekeepers and not getting passed on to decision makers, let's inspect what they're saying to those gatekeepers and see if there are ways to improve it. If they're actually reaching decision makers but not getting them to schedule discovery conversations, once again, what are they saying? Maybe there are ways to improve it. So all of these are ways to inspect activity quantity, which lead to opportunities to inspect the quality of their activities, in other words, how they perform them. And inspecting activity quality is pretty easy. You listen in on live or recorded telephone calls. You make buddy calls in person. Perhaps you attend networking events together, or you sit in the audience and listen to the salesperson deliver a seminar or webinar for demand generation purposes. Another great way to inspect a salesperson's knowledge of an opportunity is to ask them questions as if they were the customer and you're the salesperson. Because now you'll learn what they know, and that will give you indications as to whether they're doing the job the way you want it done. That's the end of the content for this video. If you'd like more information, on the Sales Compensation Store website, in both the free video series and the free special report, I outline a 9-step process that I follow when I work with clients to help them develop or revise their sales compensation plans. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Goodbye for now.